All righty. Welcome, everyone. So happy that you are here. I am Shelly Buchanan with Africa Hands, and we are in session D10. That is finding the relational in student-driven inquiry and self-determination theory.
And it's November 5th.
Good point. It's November 5th. All right, Africa, I'm having my slide trouble like I did before, and I'm not sure what that is about. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome again. My name is Dr. Africa Hands. I'm an assistant professor of library science at East Carolina University, and I work primarily or exclusively with graduate students. And I will be talking about self-determination theory, and I will leave Shelly to introduce herself.
I'm Shelly Buchanan. I am currently the school librarian and research instructor at Arbor School of Arts and Sciences in a small suburb outside of Portland, Oregon. I'm an adjunct lecturer at San Jose State University, where I work in the master's program for library and information science, the iSchool there.
And I should note that I am in Greenville, North Carolina, which is in the United States, and Shelly is in Portland, Oregon, also in the United States.
Thank you.
So what we're going to talk about today in this conversation, we're going to start with sharing our thoughts on these two theories and frameworks. I will start with self-determination theory, and then throughout both of our presentations, we will give examples of how we use the theories or models in our classrooms, and ideas about how we think it fits into the relational and this theme of relationality. Then we will have discussion, and we have a Padlet set up for you to address two questions, and we'll post the link to the Padlet. And so we'll have some time to talk about more about how we think it fits, what your thoughts are about how these two themes fit within relational work. And we will share our contact information, and then we have some references for you. So I am putting in the chat right now a link to the Padlet, just so you can have it open for when we are ready for the discussion. Next slide. So I'm starting with self-determination theory. And if you are not familiar, self-determination theory is a motivation theory. It's one of the more contemporary motivation theories. And it talks a lot about being interested in people's well-being and how one's social and cultural environment impacts their well-being and impacts their actions or their motivations, such that someone's environment can support their intrinsic motivation or hinder their intrinsic motivation. It's inspired by these three folks listed here, starting with White in 1959, who posited that there is an innate need to experience feelings of affectance on the environment. And it is affectance motivation that energizes someone to act. So thinking about competence as a motivator to act, feeling competent in your environment. Ducharme's in 1968 also influenced self-determination theory with his concept of personal locus of causality, in that the aim of behavior is to be the origin of one's own actions, rather than to be manipulated by external forces. So that brings into self-determination theory a more intrinsic feeling, so that people feel like they are in charge of their actions and not being led by extrinsic motivation factors. Lastly, the theory is influenced by Bulby's attachment theory, which had some elements of relationality in terms of exploratory behavior. And Bulby studied children and infants and found that exploratory behavior is more robust when one is securely attached. So he found that babies and children felt more free to explore in environments where they also felt more securely attached to their parents or their caregivers. So that brings in into self-determination theory, which I'll talk about in the next slide, this thinking and feeling about relatedness. Self-determination theory is a meta theory, and it has 6 mini theories that are related to it. And one theory that I focus on a lot in my teaching and sometimes in my research is the basic psychological needs theory. This theory argues that psychological well-being and optimal functioning is predicated on autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Therefore, contexts that support or thwart these basic psychological needs invariantly impact one's wellness. The theory also argues that all 3 needs are essential, and that if any of the needs are thwarted, there will be distinct functional costs or influences on the other needs. So the 3 basic psychological needs, again, relating to those other the earlier theories, competence or feeling effective in what it is that you're doing, relatedness or feeling connected to others and feeling cared for and being cared for by others, and having a sense of belongingness with individuals in communities, which I think really connects to relationality, and autonomy or acting from one's own interest and being perceived as the source of one's own actions. So what I'm going to share with you are 2 examples from my teaching, 2 examples of assignments that I created that are based on these basic psychological needs and I think connected to relationality. The first example is a choose your own adventure assignment. And again, I teach graduate students who are in preparation to work in the library and information science field. So in the Choose Your Own Adventure assignment, I use this in my public library seminar class. And there are 3 assignments that the students can choose from. There's an op-ed assignment, a library program assignment where they design or plan a library program, and there's a grant writing assignment. Before students get to the Choose Your Own Adventure assignment, they have one overarching assignment where they write a profile on a library and a community. So that is getting an overview of the community, what the community's needs are, that they can then focus on in those other 3 Choose Your Own Adventure assignments. So students will choose 2 of the 3 assignments, either the op-ed, the program, or the grant. And how I see this as fitting with relationality is that in students being able to choose what it is they want to do, so giving them some autonomy, if we go back to the basic psychological needs, I am showing them that I care about their experiences and their backgrounds. So there's a bit of andragogy that I also incorporate in my classes, and it really, I'm positioning them as experts, assuming that they have some experience in in their lives, in their work experience. Maybe they worked in a library, maybe they haven't worked in a library, but making sure that it's not necessarily a top-down experience where I'm giving them all the information and they're just kind of passively taking it in. So in this choose your own adventure assignment, it allows them to reflect on that community profile and think through what it is they want to build on. What skills maybe do they already have? What skills would they like to develop in the actual choose your own adventure assignments? Can you go back to forward to that
Oh, sorry. I'm not,
slide? No worries.
I don't know what happened there.
Yes, that one there. So it's a really self-directed experience. And I hope that it is showing students that I value their experience and how they want to grow as library and information professionals. So I think of this as attending to the relationship between myself and the students. And the second assignment, go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I was zoned out for just a second there. It's right there. So in the next assignment, I call it the Peer Genius Bar. And in this assignment, it's more of the students relating and connecting with each other and seeing each other as resources. So it's not about me determining what resources I want to talk about in the class. Again, it's really relying on the students and being experts in their field. In this particular case, this particular class is on library technology. And you know, technology, it changes from day to day. So instead of me being the sole source of information, I allow the students to take some ownership. And this is done in a discussion forum. And so again, there's autonomy built in where the students are choosing the technology tool or platform that they want to discuss. And they're connecting and relating to each other through their learning experiences from each other. So then what I see in the discussion forums is them sharing how they might use that tool with a different population of library users, how they may have found a different feature of the tool that they want to use, or just in general being interested in a particular new tool that they're learning from their classmates. So it really brings up these generative discussions among the students. And because it's one of the core classes that's taught in the beginning of their term, their time as graduate students, I think it allows them to start building some relationships that they can carry on into their other classes. Next slide. So in summary, the way I see self-determination theory, and particularly basic psychological needs theory fitting in as relational, is that in the main SDT theory, it emphasizes holistic well-being. It's been applied in education settings, in the workplace, in physical fitness types of studies. So it's really interested in how people develop and grow as human beings. It's also attuned to how people are connected to their social and cultural environments and kind of the conversation between one's social context and them as an active individual, and how those two are in relationship with each other. And lastly, I think it engages the we that Dr. Gergen talks about in one of the videos, in that I see the relatedness and how students engage with each other. So it's more of a communal experience. that they're working in partnership, that they are learning together. And I think that kind of hones in on this aspect of the we. So it isn't an experience where I am the only one who's transmitting information that the students take in. It also positions the students to learn from each other and to see each other as resources in this educational environment and in this learning experience. And I think Shelly will next talk about student-driven inquiry.
There we go. And I think you'll see some connections between student-driven inquiry. You'll see the inspiration of self-determination theory, or the underpinning of self-determination theory in how this model has been created and is implemented. And you'll see some connections to the work Africa is doing at the graduate level. Whereas I am right now, well, I've used it, this model, K through graduate school. Currently, I'm working in an elementary school, K through 8, with students in this model. The inspirations. So as you likely know, for years, progressive academics and educators have argued for a return to student-centered engagements, right? Introduced by John Dewey. You see a raft of others, Paulo Freire, Csikszentmihaly, who, rest in peace, just died a few weeks ago. You might know that. He's the author of Flow, that changed so many things for our understanding about how we are in the world. Bell Hooks, and so on. These other notable philosophers, educators, and academics who have hailed student-centered schooling orchestrated by caring teacher guides to be a framework in which students can not only learn more deeply, but also grow socially and emotionally together as they find their own strength and power in community with their peers and with their elders. So this research-based learning model is appropriate for ages 3 through 100. And as I said, I have used it K through grad school. It puts the individual learner in charge of their own self-determined and self-designed study within a caring community of supporters. Learners select a topic of personal interest, design a research plan, explore widely. I should note here, you're looking at the theoretical foundations, right? And I'm not speaking specifically to each one, but each one of these is embedded here in the design of this model that allows students to research on, inquire about something of personal interest, design a plan, explore widely, synthesize content in some form of writing, create a physical product as a demonstration of their learning that they share with the larger community. The inquiry model provides students the opportunity to study something of personal interest as part and parcel of the school curriculum. And in so doing, what happens is they share within the classroom community of practice what currently occupies their mind and heart. And while doing this, they gain skills in research, reading, writing, and content creation, while becoming the classroom and sometimes the whole school expert on their selected topic of pursuit. So I have been working, as I said, with teachers and students for a number of years using this model and in a variety of spaces. And I just wanted to pop in and show you an example of two recent students. Here is Sydney. She's 14 years old, and she decided to study the Pacific gyre and the particular plastics that are killing the organisms, both microscopic and gigantic in our ocean waters. And as part of her self-determined year-long research investigation and project work, she spent a long weekend educating the public about poisoned waters, our poisoned waters and its dying inhabitants out at the Oregon Coast Aquarium. And in the video that I don't have time to share, unfortunately, with you. We see how Sydney definitely differentiates for the ages of her visitors as she relates to them and connects with them. She has a range of props you can see here for teaching little ones about what happens with plastics in the water. And she has all kinds of ideas and statistics, valuable information to share with adults. So for everyone, she explains why both the products that we buy and our modes of disposal can make a significant difference for our waters. In addition to doing this project work, this demonstration for others in going out into the community, she wrote a research paper and presented her findings in a similar interactive session in her school community to her peers, her teachers, and larger community members of the larger community who were coming to see what students have been doing. So here is Cole, 5-year-old Cole, who studied how babies grow in utero and are born in the world. Here is Cole's academic poster for his class presentation in his kindergarten and first grade classroom. He taught his fellow classmates how it all works. Here's a little blowout, a little close-up I just had to share. It's one of the single frames in his poster session. And he writes, the sperm meets the egg and pushes until the sperm tail comes off. You will notice that this work is Cole's work alone. It's not been infiltrated by adult sensibilities. We can see it from the childlike quality of the work, obviously. You see phonetic spelling, apparent self-corrections, and of course, the authentic, unadulterated illustrations. So, the student-driven inquiry model. Educator guides who implement SDI give their students the keys to their own learning journey as they each select a topic of personal interest to explore with the support of their classmates and the support of their teacher guides. And to explain the SDI model process, we're using the extended metaphor of the road trip. And you can see starting on the left that the teacher guide supports students in tuning up the machinery, the brain, the heart, the spirit, by creating a community of practice around curiosity. And through a reflection practice of examining personal interests, students explore possible routes. Where are they going to go on this road trip they want to understand? What's going to be the best place for them to travel at this moment in time for who they are becoming now? Once a topic is selected, they start their engine and they light out into the topic and project territory, curating resources of all sorts, depending upon their age and ability, of course. So some print, digital, human, non-human. They hit the open road by reading, watching, listening, and discussing widely. As this marks the start of the investigations, students make discoveries that propel them forward, sometimes send them in other directions, down little off-roading trails. So we need to provide opportunity for course corrections in this exploration as needed. The student cohort, peers, and teachers help individuals figure out this journey and where it is they really want to best explore. And once kids commit to a particular topic, they put in the miles. Again, providing for course corrections because new things arise the more we read and explore. We know that. This is the longest phase for most learners, and students continue to gather information in their written work. During this time, kids are also embarking on their physical project. And again, the educator guide and peer cohorts touch base regularly in small groups, in one-on-one conversations for support, brainstorming, and encouragement. At some point in the inquiry road trip, students put the final touches on their work and practice presenting as they prep for the car show. And they share the memories of their learning road trip in a grand exposition with their peers and other interested members of the community. Lots of times parents come, other teachers from other classrooms come, and at the 8th grade level where I'm working right now, the whole school enjoys the presentation of the 8th graders. And after the grand parade, students assess their road trips. There's reflection built throughout this journey. And at the end, they do a larger assessment of how it all went, what they would do different, and they also plan for their next road trips, their next investigations. So student-driven inquiry as relational. In this model, excuse me, as I've mentioned, educator guides nurture a classroom community of curiosity where questions and wonderings are valued and shared all the time. Students are encouraged to share and chase their personal interests. They are empowered to explore and study, to design their own project work and create content for sharing with others. During this inquiry process, students engage in reflection, sharing, and problem solving. They do this through journaling and blogging, one-on-one mini conferences, and small group meetings. In student-driven inquiry, there's always public sharing and celebration of student learning and work. SDI creates a third space in the school classroom where students get to bring into the formal learning space their most compelling outside interests, making their learning more relevant and meaningful, and validating their individual identity as a person with particular interests and needs as they continue to explore in community who they are and how they want to be in the world with others. And oh, there goes my timer. Wow, perfect. I should add, and I've already added that, so that I'm now doing this with 8th graders, and it's proving again and again to be a very flexible, holistic model that is very, very immersive. And I think if I were to have all of my students here around me, they could talk a blue streak about how engaged and excited they are about what it is they're doing. So here is our opportunity for dialogue, and we are curious to know about your questions, your comments, your connections. We so want to hear from you. So if you would like to open up the Padlet, I think Africa is also, we're going to open up the mic. So we can grab the mic, you can add to the Padlet, whatever suits you.
Excuse me, and I put in the chat links to the Padlet. Can you go to the next slide after?
Oh, sorry, I was going right. Yes, I skipped a slide. I will get right back there, Africa. I can find my spot here.
So the discussion prompts that are on the Padlet that we'd love for you to join in the conversation there. And you can also take the mic if you want to verbalize your opinion or your answer. The first question is, where does self-determination theory and or student-driven inquiry connect in the relational landscape? Are there particular authors, papers, or ongoing research where you see some connections there? And what suggestions do you have for positioning these two ideas as relational? Both Shelly and I are new to the conversation, the topic of relationality. And so we also want to learn from you in terms of how you are thinking what we've just presented fits in with relationality. So we'll take a few minutes. If you want to share some thoughts or some questions on the Padlet, that'd be great. Someone anonymous posted that they teach sexual safety Interesting. And self-determination is paramount and applicable to that work. If that was your comment, would you like to, I think it's Amy, maybe. Do you want to share more about that, Amy? You can unmute your mic. You can't unmute it. The mute is usually in the lower left corner of Zoom. And we don't have the controls to do it for you, unless you do, Shelly, as host. And Shelly, if you hover over Amy's picture, you'll see the 3 dots.
I do. And I'm trying to get to the microphone, but I get them more, and it just says chat and pin, which is really
Oh, okay.
odd. Are other people able to unmute themselves?
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Yes, I'm able to, thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I am not sure why.
Oh, she's saying she can't get out of the Padlet. Usually do like Alt Tab and you can tab back into the Zoom room. That might help you there. Or if you see the Zoom icon on your computer, you can just click that to come back into Zoom.
I did
anyone... There, hey, there you go.
That took some doing.
Got it.
You'll realize my technological naivete. This is the first time I've met a Padlet. Okay. So I've never navigated a Padlet before. So anyway, but no, I just appreciate this conversation so much. And this is why I wanted to come to this particular group, because I'm a firm believer in, of course, self-determination as it applies to assault prevention and sexual ethics. So being able to partner with teenagers who I work with around what does self-determination mean for them in the realm of relationships and sexuality, it's kind of an awesome opportunity to apply some of these models like relatedness, autonomy, and competence to discussing sexual ethics. So thank you.
You're welcome. Are some of these topics coming up with the students that you're working with?
Yes, in a way. I mean, I'm thinking about what you talked about as far as the students' personal interests. And we do a lot of discussing social media and what types of things students are finding online, what is harmful, what is helpful, and what is interesting to them. And so we're really trying to create that discretionary capability, that almost kind of executive brain function earlier than the brain has actually developed for it, to allow conversations where students can reflect on their reactions and their triggers and be able to look at how can we look at a strength-based model where they focus on what they are interested in from a healthy standpoint, what feeds them from a healthy standpoint, and then talking really frankly about the things that are harmful and what to do about that. So it's very much a partnership with student and teacher. So I just, a lot of this is feeling really relevant to the what I do. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you for sharing that. Shelly, did you have any comments?
Just thank you, Amy. I guess I do have I have a question. I don't have one question, I have many, but I'll just pose one. I'm wondering what it is you do, Amy, to help teens feel competent enough to act in their own self-interest in the face of dangerous, precarious, questionable situation.
Yeah, that's not an easy or quick answer, but the whole course is focused. Our number one goal is developing self-knowledge in each individual student. So the whole course is focused on increasing personal empowerment and confidence, because each person, by the time they go through the course, they will understand what their personal boundaries are, what are their particular communication styles as far as communicating those boundaries, how their fight, flight, or freeze mechanism works, and how to understand that. And we also have a group of 5 safety tools that we bring into our discussion, and we apply to real life situations that the students bring into the room. So it's very much a partnership, but in answer to your question, it's really about helping them know who they are and what they bring to the table as far as sex and relationships, because unwanted sexual touch, which is the definition of sexual assault, that's going to look different for everybody. So helping teens understand what that means for them.
Right. Excellent.
Oh, I love that. I love the connection to social media and helping students to think through what it is they want out of social media. How is it that they want to engage with it instead of being led by what their peers might be doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
Shanti, I see your hands up. You want to unmute your mic?
Africa, and thank you, Shelly. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Well, we've just heard from Amy about the application of your presentations to the very intimate space of sexuality. I thought I would share a different entry point into what you have presented, because I think many pupils would envy the sort of techniques you use in your education. For example, Africa's emphasis on self-determination and Shelley's emphasis on education as your road trip. Many pupils experience their education as being placed on a conveyor belt, some sort of factory production where you enter school and then it is all controlled until you leave it, and it gets increasingly more stressful as you approach the end of school, because there are all the pressures of getting into the right university and then getting into the right job and right social circles and the right income levels. And so, we mustn't take the sort of presentations you have just made for granted. I would like to draw attention to something very much in the spirit that you have both presented. That is a book that the Learning for Wellbeing Foundation, where I work, has just published. It's called Assessment as Dialogue, because it's precisely about the also very sensitive topic, very different from sexuality, but no less sensitive, of assessment of your work, which is often felt as a judgment of who you are, how you function, where you fit in the world, and the awful word failure. There are many euphemisms for it, but that is something that low performers, all the negative labels with it. So we argue for a relational view of assessment, student evaluation as dialogue, which is about how do you learn best? What would you like to learn? What works for you? Very much in the spirit of your presentation. And we are based largely in Europe. We have collected 20 inspiring practices from across classrooms and schools in Europe, somewhat similar to what Shelly shows us, that a teacher or a school leader, rather than being a cog in a wheel, can be creative and courageous. And this side of utopia can find ways of assessing students that make it feel for them like it is your road trip. It's not some conveyor belt that you have been forced into. So I just wanted to affirm your presentations from another entry point than Amy's. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Can you share again the organization? I can't see the whole name of it on your Zoom.
I
there?
put it
It's
in the chat.
okay, great, great. Yeah, we'd love to
It's a
capture
learning
that.
for well-being foundation.
Okay,
And learning for well-being is precisely what both of you have just illustrated.
definitely. Yeah, we'd like to look at that book further.
I
The
put it in
assessment
the
as
chat.
learning.
I,
Thank you.
I would like to respond to that, Shanti, with a related thought. I know that often I have presented student-driven inquiry, the model, in a lot of different educator spaces. And one of the first questions I hear, people are overwhelmed by the prospect of managing every student studying something different, right? Because they're used to the teacher-driven model, which is like, we're all going to learn about seashore creatures in the Pacific Northwest for the next 6 weeks, right? We're all going to do that together. And so that feels somehow like the teacher feels like they've got more control over the situation. And how could they possibly control things? And my response is always, I just want to share that right here now, is like, you don't. And that's the terrific thing. That's the great thing. You as an educator are just checking in with the student because the student is in charge of doing it. And they're keeping a journal and they're reflecting and they're showing their progress. I had, for example, last year, a student who was doing a year-long project, an 8th grade boy, and man, he was on the struggle bus with he was studying fascism. His creative was a comic book, like a small graphic novel, and his study, the theme in the novel, the action of the graphics was about a fascistical situation. And he was studying and writing on the origins of fascism and how it, where it still lives today. And he just could not get his head and heart and mind around this paper. And this was during, height of COVID. So I'm just meeting with him online over and over again. And he's like, Shelly, I don't know, he'd done all this reading. He could talk a blue streak about it, but he couldn't get anything on paper. And finally, it come April, and the showcase is coming up in 6 weeks. I finally said, Max, I can't write the paper for you. You've got the knowledge. I don't have the knowledge. You're the knowledgeable one. And if you don't want to write this paper, don't write the paper. Just show up, explain things to people, show off your graphic novel. I'm not writing the paper for you. We have been around the block. I have cheerleaded you all these many, many months. And I'm out of resources. And he was like, okay, all right, I'll think about that. And by God, if that child didn't write the most amazing paper, like I got it 3 weeks later, and he emailed me and he said, Shelly, I just want to let you know, I popped my paper, I shared my Google Doc with you. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, great, Max. But I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, what am I going to see here? It was incredible. He just did the work that he knew was in him, and he needed me. He needed my crutch that I was being for him all along as I was cheerleading him through this. The cheerleader had to step out of the picture and say, this is your thing. What do you want to bring to the community? What do you want people to know? Why is this important? Anyway, it is not the teacher's job to do this work, right? It is the child's job, the learner's job to do this work. And when they are selecting something that matters to them, most of the time they do it.
Yeah, then they're intrinsically motivated to do it and to do their best with it. To your teacher's questions about so many assignments and having control and that sort of thing, that's kind of like the choose your own adventure part of my assignment gives some boundaries there. So there's both some choice, but then also it's just not willy-nilly. Sure, I could give them 5 choices, 5 assignments to choose from, but I like it because there is some structure while also supporting what students are interested in, what it is that they want to learn.
Can I just quickly what you have both said with an example from our book? What Shelly is trying to say also about the pressure teachers feel under if they feel they have to manage 20 student road trips simultaneously, some sort of major traffic control problem. But then you have to think that you're a facilitator. You don't have to be in control. So one of the teachers we spoke to gave this beautiful metaphor from theater. She spoke about the work of Peter Brook, the director, who says how when you are performing theater, you are relating to every single person in the audience, but you're relating differently. It's a different form of interaction, and you have to use your intuition and sense what the audience and the individual people in the audience feel. So she says, well, that's what I do in class. I'm assessing not by judging the pupils, but just assessing, is each one able to follow their adventure in the course of this class? And how she's assessing herself, how well am I doing in helping them on their learning journey? So that's just to reinforce what you both said. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's a really new way, I think, or different way, shall I say, about education and allowing freedom and choice versus just kind of, this is the game plan, this is what I'm told to teach. So it is, I enjoy the freedom that I can have, at least for some of my classes, to go off script and to let students lead the experience. Shelly, I had a question for you. You had talked about along the road trip, allowing space for course correction. And I was wondering if you could share how you see that as relational, if you see that as being relational there.
Course corrections as relational. Well, I'm going to go back to Max as an example, the kid who struggled for a while. His first, for the first couple months of this investigation, he decided he wanted to study body image for teens, teen body image. He is a stout fellow, or was a stout fellow. And now I see him, and somehow he's all elongated and busy being a high schooler as he came back to visit. And he was concerned that he and his peers were just not measuring up to what's on social media. And he was very clear and very frank about his concern about the impact of social media on body image and how people feel about themselves. And he started his investigation into eating disorders, what that does to a person's mental health, all of these things. He did a lot of research for a couple of months on that. And finally, right before the winter break, he came to me and he said, you know what, Shelly, this whole topic here for me is too heavy. It's too depressing. I just can't. He had done a lot of reading and work. He had sought out a specialist in the field, a teen psychologist to interview and speak with. And he said, I need to do something else, something that is more removed from my own personal experience. So that was course correction that I think about. He did some interior relating, like he did some real self-investigation in that work. He came to me about that. We talked about it. He talked with his peer cohort. He had a cohort of 3 other students, and he shared that with them, and they helped him figure out, helped him brainstorm his other interest areas. And that's how he ended up on a historical tract that felt a little more, not too distant, but for him at the moment, he was feeling like he could get some distance on it. So I feel like he really, the relational work was pretty deep in that shifting gear for him as he was sharing his feelings, very, very personal feelings about the need to make that course correction.
Thank you. I also see a bit of it in that it might foster relations with you and your students because it's showing that you are open to change, to course correction, that you know that things might not be set in stone, and that might help them feel more confident about what they're doing and that they don't have to get it right the first time.
Right, right. I think that is true. And I have stayed connected to a number of my students with whom I engaged in this road trip kind of experience. And it is an intimate experience in a way to be traveling alongside, or at least you're in the pit. What do they call that? And you're in the garage, right? Where they're pulling in their car for like a little RX or a little tune-up or a little help on something that they have personally selected. And they've got all the autonomy to do this, but they need support. So it feels like a very, very personal experience with these kids who are working on something that matters to them, and they need help from me, their other teacher guides, and their peers. And I probably should have had a couple screenshots of the blogging that these kids are doing right now. They are in cohorts and they blog weekly on the progress. Right now they've moved into free choice. I gave them prompts for the first start of the school year as they were getting going, and right now it's dealer's choice. And they're sharing what's going on with them, what the troubles are, what the successes are so far in their project, and they are responsible to reply in kind in a meaningful way to each of their cohort members. And it is remarkable the kind of supports some of these kids can be for each other. And it is always, many hearts and brains are more right than just a single one.
Yeah, definitely. We have just a few more minutes if anyone else wants to share about their experiences and how this connects.
I am just curious. Maybe I oversimplify it. It's that like normally you are curious and you want to find out something, and that's like self, and then you want and you go out there and find something from your heart, not because someone else tell you to do. That's just is that like what it means, like self-determined and self-inquiry? Because I'm curious about this topic, and I want to find out what is it. Is that?
I would say yes, that is definitely in line with it. It's being led by what is interesting to you, and from the motivational standpoint of self-determination theory, one is more motivated to act, to move forward with things because it is interesting to them. So those three, the autonomy, so having the choice of what it is that you're interested in or that you want to explore, that feeds into how you begin to feel competent and confident about what it is you're exploring. And then hopefully you're doing it in an environment where people nurture and appreciate that, so that you have some of that relatedness. So I think you're spot on, Jay, that it is about being led by what it is you're interested in. Shelly?
Agreed. And I know I just got a little blurb. I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, I saw it.
I think we probably have to tidy up now. But yes, Jay, and I think we can think about this just really briefly, and like we think about the weekend is upon us. So an example is like, if I told you all exactly what you were going to do with your time this weekend, you'd be like, well, excuse me, right? We want to dive into the weekend doing the things we want to do, full-bodied, full-hearted. and being told, or if I said you must read this book, as opposed to, you selecting from your library out there in the world. Just feel that, in your heart and in your fibers, right? When I tell you something to do, it's like, ooh, no, thank you. I'd rather select myself. And having this student-driven inquiry be part of the school curriculum on a regular basis helps individuals, it helps them become who they want to be, know who they want to be. And I've interviewed kids later on as part of my research, and kids have said, like Shelly, I learned what I was interested in and what I was not interested in. And it just was a snowballing effect for them. Really led them down some powerful paths.
I have something to share because I'm actually attending a class by Ken, and I'm reading this book, and he talked about everything is relational, and I and then start with the relationship. I always don't quite understand exactly what's that, and then what you just said is do it in a environment that nurtures it, like powered by your curiosity, doing things that you're interested in, and then you get confident because of the environment nurturing it. So I wonder if you as a teacher or we as a facilitator, how can we create an environment that nurture it? And when we communicate, talk to the students or talk to people as a sounding board, not direct them, but invite them. I think maybe that's a relationship between relational and the self-determined theory. I'm answering the question number one.
Yeah, and Jay, if you can put the name of that book in the chat, that would be helpful. Quickly to answer your question, I think for me, part of it is giving up control and releasing this feeling that I am the main source of information. So that leads the students, or for me to make assignments where the students choose their own adventure, or where they decide what technology they want to talk about. So for me, it's a more kind of a personal, I don't have to be in control of all this. I don't have to be the center of their learning experience that then leads me down the road to accepting and inviting them into the space more.
And this is because we humans are curious by nature. Like, we want to learn. We just do. We're out there grasping and looking and seeking. And we're doing that from the day we're born.
Yeah.
So it's natural. And we need to harness that natural instinct in our educational institutions. And now we're going to say,
Shelly, can you put up the last slide with our contact information? If anyone wants to contact us, please do.
Appreciation for how unbelievably well you all are making this happen, Dawn and others. So.
Oh, you're welcome, Gwen. Thank you for saying that. Alex, can you stop the recording?
I just did.
It looks like it's still going on my end.
Oh,
That's why I was wondering.
Maybe there's another one going.
it may be
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah, I think we're still wrapping up
Can you
recording.
turn it off?
I'm trying to figure out